There's an argument to be made that the Nintendo Switch Lite is the best dedicated handheld ever made. It's compact, comfortable and adorable. It lasts fairly long on the road. And it has access to what's already one of the best game libraries of all time, complete with essentials like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, as well as tons of third-party ports, indie games and retro titles. If you want access to the best Nintendo Switch games and don't mind being limited to handheld mode, the Switch Lite is a no-brainer. But some of the magic of the standard Switch gets sacrificed in favor of the Lite's smaller size, and a few physical drawbacks mean that folks with bigger hands should try before they buy. Little Switch versus Big Switch. As a mobile-only console, the Switch Lite cannot dock to a TV or output video. You can play games only in handheld mode. It also has Joy-Cons that cannot detach from the body of the Switch Lite, which is both a good and bad thing. It's good because it makes the Switch Lite's body feel more robust and durable, it has a lot less give. It's bad because Nintendo has had trouble with Joy-Cons degrading over time, with the joysticks starting to drift and become nigh unusable. If the controls on a Switch Lite stop working properly, you can't go buy a new set of Joy-Cons. You'll have to buy a whole new console or send it to Nintendo for repairs. That's not just a hypothetical either. Some users are already reporting that their Switch Lite units suffer from driftitis. Which is to say, a joystick that seems to cause in-game movement on its own if it's tapped in one direction or another. It seems less pronounced than on the original Joy-Cons, but it is something to watch for. I wasn't able to reproduce any drift on my Switch Lite, so your mileage may vary, but maybe keep that receipt handy. Additionally, if you do experience any drift, you should be able to fix it by heading into your Switch settings and recalibrating your controllers. The Switch Lite can play the same games as the original Switch, because it has the same internal hardware, but you won't be able to use motion controls without pairing an external Joy-Con or a Pro controller. These omissions save you a bit of money. That said, the Switch Lite isn't defined by its omissions. As a handheld, it's improved. Take the matte finish for example. The original Switch isn't exactly glossy, but the plastic is smooth and untextured. In the hand, it feels fine but not grippy. The Switch Lite has a better matte finish than the original Switch. It feels more stable, and doesn't slip or slide. The Switch Lite's body also weighs less, yet feels more durable. It doesn't have any give or wiggle like the original Switch. Even the display is a touch better than the original Switch. At 5.5 inches, the Lite's screen is smaller than the original Switch's 6.2-inch display, but packs the same number of pixels, making it noticeably sharper. Then there's battery life. It's still bad, but not as bad as you may remember. The Switch Lite gets about 4 to 6 hours of play on a single charge. The original gets more like 2.5 to 4 hours depending on what you play. During side-by-side testing, the Switch Lite comfortably outlasted the original Switch by at least an hour in every game I played. The Switch Lite is the first step into a new era for Nintendo. For the first time, it has released a handheld console that plays the same games as its home console. The added portability gives yet another option to Switch players who don't need a TV, and the system itself feels like a labor of love for Nintendo. Instead of making a bigger, more expensive Switch Pro, the company released a more affordable version that caters to handheld players more directly than the Switch ever has. Gameplay experience. So much of what makes the Switch a joy to own is the library of games, of which there are many excellent options to choose from. I've put many of them to the test on Switch Lite. The experience at first blush, as an established Switch owner, was that the Switch Lite's smaller form factor made the controls feel slightly cramped. They are not, in fact, if you hold the right or left side of the Lite next to the standard system, the controls are of the same size and have the same vertical spacing. That cramped feeling comes from the Switch Lite having a shorter vertical profile, 0.4 inches less than the standard Switch, measured from the bottom. This impacts where your palms rest, and thus how you're able to flex while gripping the system and adjusting between button input and analog stick duties. After a couple days of using the Switch Lite on and off, my hands grew accustomed to the new dimensions, and I was finally able to fully appreciate one of the smallest but most exciting changes introduced for Switch Lite. The dedicated D-pad. The standard Switch has just a collection of 4 distinct buttons in a diamond-shaped arrangement, and this is a viable solution, but not a preferable one. It makes sense why the original design is different, with the ability to remove Joy-Cons to be used as standalone controllers, But the Switch Lite's proper D-pad is a fair trade-off when you consider that the Switch Lite is designed to be a single-player device. The improved control while playing fighting games and platformers is immediately apparent, but generally speaking the D-pad just feels better than the previous design, giving the Switch Lite an immediate advantage in this small but meaningful way. It's good to see that Nintendo went back to basics for the Lite. Never underestimate the importance of a reliable D-pad. Looking towards the 5.5-inch screen, there are other trade-offs to consider. The Lite's display is noticeably smaller than the standard Switch's 6.2-inch screen, which gives it a higher pixel density, 267 versus 236 ppi. This also means that you can expect games with jagged polygon edges, from a lack of anti-aliasing, to look a little less rough when played on the Switch Lite. The primary disadvantage to shrinking the screen down is that games with notoriously small text are even more difficult to play than before. The ability for most Switch games to work either handheld or docked to a larger screen is likely the root cause of the seemingly ill-conceived font sizes, but given the Lite's portable-only design, it's a bit disappointing that there isn't a software-based solution for games with small text. Perhaps less critical, but worth noting, is that Nintendo has completely removed HD Rumble from Switch Lite. Rumble is rarely the star of the show, but it does play a helpful role in many Switch games. The answer to this problem is to use external Joy-Cons, but once you purchase them, you've effectively raised the price of your overall investment to around the same cost as the Switch. It's a scenario like this, where the Switch Lite's limitations start to stick out like a sore thumb. It's affordably priced, but you really have to think about what you're missing out on to get that savings. You won't be able to use the system on your TV. Local multiplayer gaming will require you to make an additional investment that practically kills the point of going Lite in the first place, and you'd be confined to playing on the small screen. Bottom line. As a Switch owner, I have no need for Nintendo's handheld-only version of its wildly popular console. But the system's compact and adorable design is nearly impossible to resist. It's the perfect companion for subway trips, plane rides, and just hanging on the couch, and if you're looking for the cheapest entry point into the Switch's great game library, the Lite is the one to get. Still, there is a certain magic to docking a regular Switch and instantly resuming your handheld game session on a TV, or to sliding off your Switch's Joy-Cons and passing one to a friend for instant tabletop Smash sessions. If that part of the Switch experience is important to you, you're better off with the standard Nintendo Switch. But if all you're looking for is a dedicated handheld that plays great games on the go, the Switch Lite does that better than any portable Nintendo device before it.